Hi guys, I'm Rex King. Welcome back to Monday Night Movie, and today we're taking a look at Thin Ice. Thin Ice was directed by Jill Sprecher. For those of you who have followed the channel, some of you might remember my review of 13 Conversations of One Thing. She was also the director of that particular film. The film was released on Sundance in 2011, and Sprecher signed over the distribution rights to ATO Pictures. This is where things get a little bit confusing with the film. You see, ATO thought the film had a lot of pacing issues and decided to cut a full 15 minutes from the film. However, Sprecher wasn't involved in that editing process. Now, the studio has claimed that this is because Sprecher didn't want to be a part of the editing process, but Sprecher has claimed back that it's because the production studio and the distributors just didn't let her be a part of that process from the get-go anyway. So, which version of the film is better, the director's cut or the theatrical cut? Well, let's take a look at the film overall, and maybe I can answer that question. Thin Ice's story follows a insurance salesman named Mickey, played by Greg Kinnear, as he tries to swindle this older gentleman, uh, played by Alan Arkin, out of his very valuable violin that he has in his possession. However, in doing so, he accidentally gets involved in a murder, leading down a rabbit hole of deceit involving insurance fraud and a bunch of other deceptions along the way. This film's story overall is a problem, mainly because it's just not that interesting. On paper, it sounds pretty cool. An insurance guy trying to get a very valuable violin, but being caught up in this huge debacle involving a murder leading down a web of deceit. But it just isn't pulled off all that well. So I'm going to have spoilers about this film in this review from here on out. Since this movie hinders a lot on its reveal, you probably want to skip this review if you haven't seen the film. But I do think I have to talk about the big reveal in order to explain my opinions. So you've been warned. So, long story short, this film is basically a long con. The murder is been faked, and it's to swindle this insurance guy and his company out of money. Now, this could work if we, the audience, didn't figure out the big reveal halfway through the movie. But I did. I really quickly figured out exactly what was going on and what the plan was, so it took me out of the experience overall, leaving this film to feel kind of hollow and all around generically meh. Now, the director's cut has 15 minutes extra towards the beginning. Most of it's the setup scenes that was cut, and I mean, they're fine. They do add more to the character, but overall, it doesn't really hinder the film to have them removed. Now, that's not to say that ATO was a complete and utter jerk for keeping her out of the editing process. If that isn't true, if that is true, that's what they did, then yeah, that's a problem, and they really shouldn't have done that. But I don't think it affected the movie. Even their 90-minute version is still really poorly paced. The film is really boring and really easy to figure out what's going on. You can see most of the twists and turns coming a mile away. So overall, I'm going to give the story a 2 out of 10. Then you have the characters. And, well, here's another problem with the film. There isn't a single character I liked or felt relatable. Most of these characters are jerks, and none of them are ones that I feel like anyone is going to be drawn towards or relate towards. So for a film like this, there's just nothing here character-wise to really hook an audience. And that is a huge problem. If you're making a film, you want to have at least one character that the audience can hook onto and relate towards. But this film doesn't really have anyone like that. So overall, the characters just don't work. So I'm going to give the character score a 1 out of 10. There's just no character here that's worth the movie. Then you have the performances, and the performances actually are good for the most part. Even though these characters aren't particularly well written and aren't really anyone we're going to feel attached to, all the actors do a realistically good job performing as their respective characters. Greg Kinnear plays the fast-talking insurance agent really well, and I really enjoyed his performance in this film. The standout for me, though, has to be Billy Crudup as the guy who commits the murder, in quotations, because like I said, everything's a long con, and he plays this like very insane character, very energetic, trying to prevent himself from being caught, trying to basically be intimidating, and he plays this character really well, and I feel like that is where the film is at its strongest. I do have a complaint with one of the performances, and oddly enough, that performance is Alan Arkin. Usually I love Arkin in these types of films, but honestly, him as Gorvy just doesn't work, mainly because of the weird accent they decided to give the character. I don't know if that was Arkin's decision or if that was Spreacher's decision, but it just doesn't work and took me out of the movie whenever he was speaking. So I'm going to give the performances overall a 7 out of 10. Everyone does a half-decent job. I just have problem with Arkin's specific performance. Then we come to the visual style, and there's nothing to talk about here. Just like last film, all the visuals are simple, really decently composed, but they just, unlike last week, don't add anything to the film. There aren't any small little tidbits that I can point to and say, oh, this is what they were trying to accomplish with it, and that's a problem. So, yeah, the visuals are good, they just don't add anything, so I'll give the visual style a 6 out of 10. The musical score, same type of thing. It's not bad on its own, and the tracks are pretty okay. It's just, it's so withdrawn from the film that you can barely hear it throughout the movie, so they don't really add anything here. But again, the score isn't terrible, so I'll give the music a 6 out of 10 as well. So my final verdict, well, Thin Ice is a time. I mean, there really isn't anything terrible in here. I just couldn't latch on to any of the characters, and I felt the story wasn't paced very well, nor was it all that interesting. So I'm going to give the film a final verdict of 4 out of 10. Overall, the film is just bland, boring, and can be skipped if you want to. So that's what I thought about Thin Ice. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below if you've seen it. And if you liked the video, like, comment, and subscribe. And next week, we'll be taking a look at another Best Picture winner, Gigi. See you then.